What if I were to tell you that one of the most important traits to be a better leader is to have a well-regulated nervous system? What would you say? Let's look at it. Our nervous system is this complex system of neurons and cells and nerves that runs through our body and collects all the information through our five senses, checks it, decides whether this information is a danger or a threat in order to protect us from threats, and then in order to help us thrive. All the information that we receive from our five senses is processed firstly from this part of our brain that is called the amygdala. The primitive system, the primitive part of our brain, which is called the lower brain sometimes, and it's here in the back of our head. And I'm going to use my hand in order to show you this model. And this is a model that is used by Dr. Dan Siegel, a psychiatrist that works a lot with mindfulness at UCLA. And we're going to pretend that this hand is the human brain, and this part here is the spine. And the part of the brain that gets activated first when we receive external stimuli is this part here, which is called the amygdala. And it's part of the lower brain, the more primitive brain. This is a part of our brain that constantly asks one question: am I safe? Now, it receives all the information from the external environment, and if it perceives that one object or one stimulus is a potential threat, it sounds the alarm. It puts on the panic button, it hits on the panic button. And what does it do? It actually flips the lid. What is this lid that the amygdala flips? It's this part of our brain that is right here behind our forehead, which is called the prefrontal cortex. And this part of our brain is the more wise brain. It's a part of our brain that was developed more recently. It's a part of our brain that is more able to see both sides of a story. It's a part of our brain that makes us more calm, regulated. It's the part that allows us to deal with danger and threats in a more wise and clever way and not feel panic whenever something that we don't know comes along. And as you can imagine, this is a part of our brain that we want to operate most as a leader. So I want us to think of the nervous system as having three distinct zones of operation, right? There is the red zone, which is a top part of the system. This is when we're upregulated, when we're feeling that we want to fight or flight, when we feel that what we are perceiving is a danger, whether real danger, let's say a car that crosses with a red light and we need to press on the brakes to avoid the danger, or whether it's a perceived danger, like for example, a deadline that we haven't met, or a presentation that we need to give in front of a lot of people, or a colleague that we have a difficult conversation with. It's the same part of the brain that is activated for all these situations. So in that part of the nervous system, the red zone, we are more reactive, we are more scared, we get more angry, there's a lot more agitation, sometimes there's a lot of impulsiveness, we're hyper aroused. You know, this is when we're stressed. This is the part when we're really activated, right? We know that part quite well, a lot of us. And we don't want to be there as a leader because we're not making wise decisions when we're operating with that part of the nervous system. And then the other part is the black zone on the bottom part of the nervous system. And the black zone is when we feel like we're frozen, when the danger that we have in front of us is making us freeze, when we feel that we want to retract to ourselves, when we're avoiding, when we don't feel like we want to make decisions, when we're keeping things close by. You know, when we don't want to take any initiative, when we're not motivated, when we feel lethargic or we have less energy, right? Again, if you think about it, that's not a part of our nervous system that you want to be regulating as a leader. Now, the part of the nervous system that is ideal for us to operate most of our time is the resilience zone. We want to be here in the middle, where we're calm, we're engaged, we're present, we know exactly what is going on, and we're also wise. Now, the problem is that when that primitive part of the brain, the amygdala, is activated and it hits the panic button, it flips the lid. Now, what is that lid? As I said before, is that part here in front of the brain. I want you to imagine that the nervous system, again, is like a pot of water. And when you put it on the stove and you start raising the temperature, that water starts to boil. And when it comes to that point when it really boils, then it flips the lid of that pot. And that lid is that front part, which is the wise part of the brain. So neurologically, when we are stressed, unfortunately, the wise part of our brain does not work. There is no connection. We are not wired for wisdom when we feel unsafe. And think about it. If the building is on fire and the alarm is on, you're not going to be thinking about improving your targets and the goals for the next quarter. You want to be running out the building. That's exactly what happens with our nervous system. There's no connection. So when we're stressed as leaders, we're not operating as wise leaders. And this is something that we need to be aware of. So what can we do? First, we need to be aware. We need to be aware of our body sensations, what is happening in our body when we're feeling stressed, and to be able to identify which zone our nervous system is in, because that is going to give us a signal that we need to change something. And second, we need to have the tools and practices in order to regulate that nervous system and bring it back to that resilience zone. And there's lots of ways to do this, and we can talk about them. One of the most important ways and one of the most effective ways and scientifically proven ways is practices of mindfulness. We know that the human brain is very plastic. It changes according to what we hear, what we feel, what we practice, what we say, and what we experience. Is what we call experience-dependent neuroplasticity. So according to how we practice and how we live our everyday life, we can build the brain that is going to create the future that we want as leaders. So we practice with specific practices that train our mind, and then in that way we create a more stable nervous system.